Good morning, Grinders. Welcome to the DFS pregame show here on RotoGrinders. I'm Jordan Cooper, a.k.a. Blender at Blender HD, if you want to follow me on Twitter. And it's Tuesday, September 20th. And we'll be talking a little bit about math today, okay? Today's going to be the Tuesday, what's with the T? The technical Tuesday? Technical? I don't know. The Teaching Tuesday? It's Teaching Tuesday. Maybe. I don't know. We have to come up with some type of name for Tuesdays, I guess, while NFL is on. But every day, every morning is always a good day to give me the thummy thumb. It's Thummy Thumb Tuesday. It's that more like Thursday. Thursday should be Thummy Thumb Thursday. Tuesday, I still appreciate the thummy thumbs. So hit that like button. It helps us out. Free content here, right? We got tons of stuff on the channel, NFL content as always throughout the course of the week. Sign up for RotoGrinders Premium. You get our projections, you get our ownership, you get all of our content. I have a premium show, I have a Discord. I've been having conversations the past couple of days in the Discord, answering questions, talking about strategy, about math, about everything. So join us here at RotoGrinders. Click on that link in the description, get $10 off your first month. Good morning, Wataz. Defik, Suki Singh, Matt Mears, Grant Brown, Bart B. Good morning. I wanted to talk a little bit about math today. Okay, like last night on Prize Picks, I was shocked on Prize Picks. Okay, so I dabble. I have been dabbling on Prize Picks, Underdog, those types of sites. Not so much in the past 3 weeks because obviously, we're working hard on releasing the Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports course and tools. So wasn't even playing DFS, so just working on that. And then NFL kind of starts up, and then like MLB is kind of shoved to the side a bit. And one of the keys on beating these sites is getting the numbers early. And if you can't stay up until 1 a.m. when the board comes out on like Prize Picks, like here, like you're gonna miss numbers. Like if you take a look, you get up in the morning, right? Take a look at this. I mean, like, and I track all of this because I write everything down. Like you'd get up and you go, okay, what's a good pick on Prize Picks? And it's like I have a lot of Pablo Lopez, right? I have a lot of this, but not at 6.5 strikeouts. I have it at 5.5 strikeouts. I have the over 5.5. You can't get that anymore. You had to be up. Christian Javier, I have under 7 Ks. It's right. It's at 6. Under 6 ain't good, right? So don't pick this. Don't do under 6, right? Under 6 is no good. Under 7 is great, right? So going through all of these, it's like when the board came up, it's like I just compared this. I used the back projections, Derek Carty's baseball projections, which we offer here at RotoGrinders, and it has statistical projections for Ks, for everything. So it's just like, okay, let's see when the board comes up, which ones have the biggest discrepancies. And that's what we're going to talk about, discrepancies today. But in general, like if you're not going to get the best number, if you're not going to get a good number, then it doesn't matter. There's no point in asking me what do I have, right? Because I have Pablo Lopez, but I have it at 5.5 over. I have Javier at 7 under. I have Nestor Cortez at over 5, not 5.5. I have Carlos Carrasco. Wow, I have Carrasco under 6. It's now down to 4.5. That's what great value there. Patrick Sandoval, I have it over. No, I have his points. I don't have his strikeouts. Who else do I have? Yes, the Clevenger number's still up 3.5. I got that over. So maybe that may not be that great. If you don't see it move dramatically, that's typically a sign that maybe you've overestimated something. You should want to see your picks move, right? If they move by close, that means over the long run, you're winning. Okay, that's unmutable fact. Okay, we got a pitching score. Like, yeah, I have pitching score. I have Stripling's under, but I have under 28.5. Now the Sandoval number's still up. I have this over. Carlos Carrasco, I have way under. I have 36.5 under. Look, it's already down to 31. 5 points. Yeah, this is like free money. I mean, you just have to get it when the board comes up. Like it's 11 o'clock in the morning, and I'm looking, going, I don't know if there's anything of value anymore. So if you're not willing to be there where the board is up and hammer them, like you're just People ask me like about Prize Picks and Underdog like an hour before, like, oh, it's 6 o'clock at night. Like, there's nothing. Anything that was worthwhile has already moved, right? And if it hasn't moved by then how great could it be, right? Like, I have like the Clevenger 3.5 strikeouts. Like, I think the bat has him at 5, like a little over 5.1 or something. Like, if this doesn't move to 4 by close, like, then I don't know how great that is. I'm not going to devote that much money to Clever. I'm not going to just start hammering it because, like, oh, it hasn't moved, so I might as well just keep on hammering it. No, it should be a sign that that you're getting market resistance. Lopez, I just kept on doing. I was surprised Lopez still stood there. When I went to sleep last night, like, it was like an hour later, and the number didn't move from 5.5. Like, the bat had him at 8 strikeouts. So I just kept on building 2-pick powers with Lopez over and over again, expecting it to move at some point, and in an hour it still didn't move. So I'm like, maybe I should stop. Right? If it hasn't moved, it's like 2.5 strikeouts off compared to the bat. So I don't know. But then when I woke up in the morning and I saw 6.5, I'm like, okay, yeah, thank you very much. Gimme. Okay, good. I made a good one. Doesn't matter what happened. Remember, it doesn't even matter what happens. If you could get closing line value on everything, for your bets, like, you win in the long run. Like, that, it's just the way it is. The closing line is the most efficient line you're going to see, even on props. So if you could beat the closing line on everything, on as many things you can, it's EV central. But the discrepancy is what I really want to talk about. Okay, so that's why I said it's going to be a math lesson. And this applies to DFS, this applies to betting, this applies to prop betting, this applies to anything. Okay, like, that's why, get the Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports. The original course, the Fundamentals Masterclass, which is 15 hours, has a lot of the math stuff, but not like formulas. You're not going to get confused. Oh, my eyes glaze over. Because just understand the concepts. Don't care about the formulas. Ballpark it. Most of the stuff that you'll be doing, you could ballpark and be profitable. Okay? So at least understand the concepts. And then obviously in the advanced players course, I talk a little bit more about distributions in here. So go to theoryofdfs.com and get that. And also the advanced players course comes with a bunch of custom Excel tools that you could build, use lineups, analyze lineups, right? Build much higher plus EV lineups using those tools alongside an optimizer like lineup, and projections. You need projections and ownership, so that's what you get at RotoGrinders. But here, like, I had someone ask, because we have a Discord, and there's a channel in our Discord called Chief's Prop Shop. Chief Will Priester, he runs that channel, and that channel is like a free channel. I don't know why it's a free channel, but it's a free channel. So as long as you have a RotoGrinders account, you don't even have to be a premium subscriber. Just as long as you have just go to rotogrinders.com and just sign up. So just so you have an account, you could get into the Discord and connect your account there, and you could hang out in the Chief's Prop Shot all you want. And sometimes I hang out there, and sometimes ask people with math questions and prop betting. Right? I could do that in the Blenders Game Theory channel also, but they were asking me, it's like, how far off do you need to be where a pick or a bet is worth betting? Okay. I don't know how I'm going to how I could structure this, but remember, on sites like Prize Picks and Underdog, you're forced to make at least 2 pick parlays, and they have fixed odds. Okay, I've gone through this before. You can go back in August. I did plenty of shows on this. That basically a bet needs at least a 58 prop here needs to have at least a 58.5% win probability, implied win probability, for it to be break even. That's the break even point. Okay. So if something's off by this much, like that, is that enough to make it 58.5%? Only because that's minus 137 if you want to put it in American odds. Because when you put two things together, right? If I put do and I go more, I'm getting paid. My payout is 3-1, 2-1 winnings, right? In order for that parlay to be worthwhile. If you went to just a normal sports book and tried to parlay these two together, like they would pay you the odds on both of them and the VIG obviously combined. So like $30 for these two bets at their current prices may pay out actually like I don't know, 120 or something like that. Does it pay out $90? No, because 5 strikeouts and 6.5 strikeouts are both like minus 115s. And what's minus 115? That's like, 53%. So you need to find, even on sites like PrizePicks and Underdog, it can't just be off. Like, for instance, if I go to, like, I'll even bring it up. Where's the bet? RotoGrinders. If I go to RotoGrinders, if I go to the bat, and you can do this for football, and we'll talk about football also. Let's go to the bat. Let's go to the K's. I'll go to the standard projections. Right? This is what I do at like 1 in the morning when I'm going to go on PrizePicks or Underdog. Right? Pablo Lopez 8.57. They hung a 5.5. Yeah, good for them. Okay, so you have here. It's like okay. So for instance, like Mike Clevenger, you can see here K's 5.13. It hasn't moved. Like that 1.5, 1.6 is pretty good. So now you go. Let's pick out one. I just wanted to make an example of like let's say Brian Bayo. What is his prop at? Okay, 4.64. Okay, so in the bat, Bayo's mean number of strikeouts is 4.64. Okay, PrizePicks has a 5 right here. So you'd be naturally inclined to, well, the bat says 4.64, so I'm going to go less. But that does not make this a plus EV. That does not make this plus EV at all. Because where is 4.64 on Brian Balos, or whatever, how you ever pronounce his name, his distribution? 4.64, it has to be off by 8.5%, right? So 8.5 by a percentile. Okay, by a percentile, not a percent, but a percentile. So it has to be, where does this number, 4.64 is, if we go by the bat, is his mean, like right in the middle, 50th percentile, 4.64. So where's 5 on it? If 5 is past the 58th percentile, then you'd hit the under. Then you go less. Okay, that's valuable, right? Because we're forced into minus 137s. We have to find minus 137s or better. Is under 5 good? Should be priced at minus 137. It would, if it could be priced at minus 137 if 5 is exactly on the 58th percentile, 58.5 percentile, and then it would be break even. It wouldn't matter what you did. Okay, so where is 5 on it? How much is the half a strikeout worth it? Which is not even a half a strikeout. That's what you have to determine. Like if you were just prop betting, like you weren't forced into fixed parlays, then you like Brian Bayo under 5.5 could be plus 110, right? And then you have to convert that. Plus 110 is like 49%, right? And he's where is that on his distribution? Now, because on PrizePicks and Underdog, we're looking for minus 137s, we need a significant enough gap. And it's significant enough that I don't even know if you need to actually compute it, because it should be so significant that it would be obvious. So like 0.4 strikeouts isn't worth like that 58th percentile or 42nd percentile if you're going the other direction. So what I'm looking for is like, okay, Mike Clevenger here is 3.5. We take a look at his strikeout. His mean is 5.13. So it's over 1.5 strikeouts off. Well, a half a strikeout at that level is probably worth 20 cents at least, right? Half a strikeout. So now that you're talking about like 60 cents. So once you're at 60 cents, you're way past the 58.5 percentile, right? So it's like you should be hitting the over here, assuming the projections are right? Assuming the pitch count is right. right? So this, but if Clevenger was at 4, for instance, he still probably that one strikeout, he probably still would be plus EV, right? That would still be worth it. It was at 4.5, you'd stop, right? Even though the number here says 5.1, whatever it was, if it was 4.5, it may be past the vig on a sports book. If the sports book hangs a line, let's say they hung a 4.5 at minus 110. That may still have a little bit of value. If you believe in if you obviously trust the projection model, that may have a little bit of value because you still have to pay the 10 cents vig. So that's still like 52.8, like right there, right? Where is 4.5 on the other end of the spectrum? Does it hit that mark? Maybe it does. Maybe there's slight value. But since on Prize Picks and Underdog, we're looking for vast discrepancies. Like I could easily see that 3.5 to 5 is more than minus 137. Right? Same thing for Pablo Lopez. When that number came out at 5.5, and the bat had him at 8.5, or had him at 8.22 actually yesterday. 3 strikeouts. I mean, if each strikeout is worth maybe around 20 cents, like, dude, we're talking about, I mean, it's 3 strikeouts off. We're talking about like $1.20 off. I mean, it's absurd. So it's like, for those big discrepancies, you could see. But if you're going through, we had there was someone, Joe. I wasn't there for it, but people were joking around yesterday that someone did Johnny Munt's Prize Picks, like in the blitz. He was like 13 yards, and the Prize Pick was like 10.5. He's like, I gotta hammer the over. It's like those 3.5 yards aren't worth. They aren't going to get you to minus 137. Sorry to tell you that the 3 yards ain't worth it, right? But they did have Traylon Burks at 28.5, and the blitz had him at like 44 yards. And I think earlier they probably had him at 26.5. I have no idea. But like that amount of yardage, I mean, it's off by like 16 yards on a prop that is only like 28.5. So it's like, how much is that worth? It's worth way more than 50. It's worth way more than minus 137. So I hit it. Josh Allen pass attempts in the blitz, 38.5. Prize Picks had it at 32.5. Underdog had it at 32.5, and I just hit the over. I paired them together with Burks. It's like, there you go. Now, there were tons of other picks and props on yesterday's games. None of them that I saw hit any level past that 58.5 percentile, or at least that I would be confident in. So how much is a yard worth? Like, you can't treat all the stats the same. One strikeout is worth way more than one pitching out, right? If you're going to do here's the pitching outs, right? Let's go through the pitching out. I mean, we could just go through. Let's take a look at Clevenger. These are okay. We'll look at that in a second. So if I go through and I go like pitching outs, so where we get this outs, okay? I'm going to go to Clevenger, pitching outs 18.8. Okay, he's at 16.5. Is that worth the over? Well, it's 2 pitching outs off, right? It's essentially 2 pitching outs off. But how much is a pitching out worth compared to a strikeout? Imagine the difference between Clevenger being 3.5 strikeouts and 5.5, and it's projected for 5.5. The strikeouts are worth way more than the pitching outs. So just a factor of 2 pitching outs, will that bring you to that 58.5 percentile? This would be close. Okay, based on how the distribution of pitching outs for pitchers are. Okay, so it has to do with the statistic and what this distribution looks like for even just an average player. Okay, and that's why not all distributions are equal. Most people think in terms of a normal distribution, but most things aren't normal. They may be close to normal. Some are closer than others. But like pitching outs are are normally distributed, and they also have it's probably more of a T distribution. Like this bump goes up way high, right? You don't get many. Like it's much more narrower than this. So for instance, if we were to say that 18 and a half pitching outs is over here, 17 and a half, 17 and 19 are probably 17 is probably very close to the 18. 19 could probably be further down. 20 is further down because how many pitches is he going to go? How often does he throw 8 innings? So that graph is going to start coming down really narrow, really, really fast. And then in the beginning, you're barely going to see anything. What's the difference between 1 out? Does he go 1 out or 2 outs? Like how often does Mike Clevenger only get 1 out? Not often he gets it. And if he gets 1 out, he most likely gets 2 outs, right? Like on that end of the spectrum, either he's getting blown up and he comes out of the game at some point. 0 outs in, 1 out, 2 out, 3 out, 4 out, 5 out. Like you're going to see very, very few. It's going to be very flat. Then once we start getting to like, let's say 12 outs, right, which is 4 innings, then it starts coming up, right? Probably starts coming up on 2 and 3 a little, but then on 4, it starts coming up much more dramatically, right? Starts shooting up. 4 innings, 4.1 innings, 4.2 innings, 5 innings, right? Then we start saying, here's where the bulk of it is. So a pitching out, it's very flat, and then it's a nice big bump up there. So like the difference between 16 and a half, 17 and a half, and 18 and 16 and a half and 17 and a half is no. Let's say the bat had a 17 and a half. Would you just go like this over? No, because like that's the difference between that is it probably doesn't even cover the VIG if you were to bet it on a sports book. If it was a minus 110 and you had it at 17 and a half and it was posted at 16 and a half, probably wouldn't even be worth betting, even though it's off by 1 pitching out. But if this was a strikeout prop, you'd be hammering it, right? Because the difference of 1 strikeout starts getting much further away from the player's distribution. Because think about strikeouts. Let's take a picture like that's decent enough. Corbin Burns. Okay, I'm not even going to say Jacob deGrom. 0 Ks. What's his distribution? What does his graph look like for 0? How often does he throw 0 strikeouts? Very few of the time. 1 strikeout. Very few of the time. 2 strikeouts. Starts going up a little, right? 3 strikeouts. Now it's starting to curve. 3 strikeouts, it's starting to turn. 4 strikeouts, it's turning more. 5 strikeouts, it's turning a lot up. It's shooting up. 6, it's shooting way up, right? At 6, and around 6.5 and 7, now it starts coming around the curve, right? And then at 8, it starts coming. Now it's dipping. 9, it starts dipping even further. 10, it starts dipping even further. And then at the bottom end, that's very flat. You'll get like 12, 13, 14, 15, right? Not many 15s, right? Probably as many 15s as there are zeros, right? So this normal, it's more normal of a distribution, but like it's very narrow. It's much more narrow in the middle. And the narrower in the middle, when you get very close to that top, like the difference of a half a strikeout is like not that dramatic. But let's say like the strikeout prop line was 1 strikeout off. Like because this distribution is so narrow, once you get 1 strikeout off, you're going way up. You're going to the 65th percentile or 35th percentile within 1 strikeout of his narrow distribution. So if it was off, you could have a strikeout prop that's off by a half a strikeout and have it not be worth it on Prize Picks. But if it's off by 1 strikeout, then it's worth it, right? Depending on the distribution and depending on the stat that it is. So we take a look at other stats. Like, for instance, pitcher fantasy score. Fantasy points are primarily normally distributive. So, like, if we had, for instance, let's go to Mike Clevenger. Oh, they don't even list him. Let's go to Nick Lodolo, 34.5. So I'm going to go to the FanDuel scoring. Lodolo, 32.2. That's what the bat has as a mean projection. Well, he's at 34.5. That doesn't mean you hit the less. Like, you need to get to the 42nd or 58th percentile. What does 2 points represent? What's the difference in his distribution or any average pitcher's distribution? If this was 34 up here, where does 32 lie? Is it far away enough? You can see where my mouse is, that it's worth playing on Prize Picks, or it's even worth playing if this was a minus 110. Maybe the under is worth playing at a minus 110. Maybe. I don't even know if the 10 cents is worth it. Right? So you need a bigger discrepancy than this. Right? So if the difference is in the bat, right, 32.5 versus 34.5, it's probably a pass on Prize Picks. That's 2 fantasy points. So basically, we're looking for ones that are way off. That would be so obvious that why not, right? You go Brian Bayo, 23.5. We look on here, and Bayo is at 24.5. Not going to hit that minus 137 based on the distribution of fantasy points. That's much more normally distributed, right? And it's also probably much flatter up here. It's probably it's not as narrow. It doesn't just shoot up narrowly, right? Because it's fantasy points, not just strikeouts. There are appearances that, he has a bunch of innings and no earned runs, but only has 3 strikeouts. So that still gets you in this big 68% one standard deviation kind of chunk here. So in looking through these, like here's Kyle Gibson. I have his over 21.5. So Kyle Gibson, and the bat always likes Kyle Gibson. Kyle Gibson, 28.62 in the bat. 28.62. Okay? 7 fantasy points off. That seems like enough, right? For Prize Picks, right? Give me the more. Now, the fact that it didn't move means that the market may be not as high on Gibson as the bat is. And the bat is typically high on Gibson. Do you trust the bat? Do you trust the public? I mean, you have to weigh them both. All I know is that, his K is 1K off on Prize Picks, and his fantasy points are 8 or 7 points off. So I put them in last night, put it in last night, 1 in the morning, whatever. I put that in with a lot of Pablo Lopez, right, and Carlos Carrasco unders. But the fact that it has not moved, and it's 11:30 in the morning now, means that the bat may be on an island. So does that mean, and I'm just talking about from a logistical standpoint of how you think about sports betting. Because some people, they're like, I trust my model completely, and it hasn't moved, and I'm piling on. They'd wake up in the morning going, I can't believe the Gibson ones haven't moved. Let me put another $500 down. I don't do that. Because there's a thing called market resistance. Like, you can't automatically go in thinking you're smarter than everyone else. Because other people are also making picks, making prop bets, right? We could go to Scores and Odds, right? We could go to Scores and Odds, and let's say I go to MLB props. Let me go to Gibson strikeout prop and what it looked like on U.S. books. I don't necessarily look at U.S. books for this, but for the sake of this stream, we're going to look at U.S. books. So we go to Kyle Gibson. We have an over 3.5 at minus 149. We have under 4.5 at minus 138. Right? So basically, 4, somewhere around 4 is the kind of more of the market consensus in the prop market currently, which is not that liquid of a market. Okay. So these aren't necessarily the most efficient lines anyway. But like the market in the prop market is nowhere near 5. So I'm much less likely to put as much money on it, even though I'm using the bet projections, right? Pablo Lopez, for instance, 8.5. Like, what does he look like? Let's go up to where's Lopez? 6.5. Pretty much, yeah, 6.5. We look at the synthetic hold of 14 cents, right? You got 6.5. Now, if you trust the bat completely, you'd be hammering over 6.5 at minus 120, right? But there's market resistance. I mean, just like, dude, just don't keep on going. I mean, at some point, maybe think in terms of put in the risk that maybe you may be off. Your origination may be off to some degree. Now, if they move in your favor, that's great. And if you got them beforehand, that's great also. But what the market is showing me is that my Gibson overs, like, I'm getting market resistance. So it's not the matter of I know better than everyone else. Let me start piling in more money on it. The other ones I knew I did well because they moved. And I got it in early. Right. And the further away that is, like that Pablo Lopez line was off by so much compared to the bat that I invested more money. Carrasco, I met like that was my two biggest, the unders on Carrasco and the overs on Lopez. And I put a whole bunch of 2 picks. I have a whole bunch of stuff in. Combinations of 2s. And then once everything moved, I'm like, okay, now the value's gone. And I'm glad I put all that money down on those. Right. But I also put a decent chunk down on the Gibson ones. But I didn't go as whole hog because an hour later they haven't even moved. And then in the morning, they haven't moved either. So if I find other stuff that's inefficient, because they'll be putting up other stats, right? Maybe there's a walks or hits or something up. Am I going to be like, well, I got to pair that with Gibson for a lot of money because it hasn't moved? No, it hasn't moved. I mean, I'll still make picks with him, but I'm not going to say, oh God, you got to go on and start hammering Gibson overs. According to the bet, yes. That there's value there if you trust the bat, because a lot of it is gone because it's moved already. But there's a balance. So if you're trying to originate by using a projection model, I mean, you can't just automatically think like I just trust that. You could just say I trust it and whatever. I don't mind putting $1,000 on it. Over the long run, you're probably going to be out ahead. But there's some weight in mattering of like there's other smart people out there, and the fact that it hasn't moved means that not enough liquidity has come in on the side that you're on. You don't want it to move. Not in your worst case scenario, it moves against you. That means you screwed up, right? Imagine I did Pablo Lopez 5.5 over, and I slammed that, and then I wake up in the morning and it's 5. Now it's moved against you. Now, then you start getting a sick feeling in your stomach, right? But what is the discrepancy that you need when you're just betting props? Just props. And you're just betting on FanDuel, DraftKings, PointsBet, wherever, right? BetMGM. All you have to do is beat the VIG, right? As long as you get the right number at the right price, the discrepancy of a half a strikeout maybe still worthwhile to play. You get a half a strikeout plus 100, plus 110 or something, that may be worthwhile. I mean, you may have a, 1%, 2% edge on or something. And those things add up over time. But on Prize Picks and Underdog, you need 37 cents, right? You need a substantial amount to make it worthwhile. And the best part about Prize Picks and Underdog is that they tend to hang bad lines, right? And then they get shaped, and they get shaped much more. And then once the next day shows up, by the afternoon, most of these numbers, the strikeout numbers will kind of match what the strikeout props are here, right? Patrick Sandoval 5.5, but I think last night you could have gotten him at 5. Look at Nestor Cortez. Nestor Cortez is at like 5.5 right now, but he was 5 last night on Prize Picks. And Underdog typically doesn't post their strikeout props and all that type of stuff until the morning, and a lot of times they match all of these. But these aren't liquid markets. So by the afternoon, maybe a lot of these lines do move by a half a strikeout or 2 or 3 pitching outs. I mean, I've seen Underdog put up 20.5s where the books had it at 17.5. And I just started going under. It's like, and then by the end of the day, it's up to 18.5. Right? Right. It was 17, and now it's 18.5 minus over 18.5 minus 135. It's like, okay, the under 20.5 at the time seemed pretty good, and now it's good, but not as great as it was before. There's the worthwhileness of pitching outs. As sports projections in chat, kind of weird. I was in the middle of bringing up stuff like the distributions. Right, the Poisson distribution typically is best and simplest option to price most of these props given a mean projection. Can just plug mean into calculate to calculate probability. Yes. So I was going to go through that. I always talk about normal distributions, multimodal or bimodal distributions, the two humps. But there's also, I was searching for it before, Poisson distribution, right? Where the mean, it's not, these aren't like equal. These are, or what I would sometimes refer to as skewed distributions, right? So you see like the Poisson distribution, or you see like stuff like this. Like, so what I'm talking about, like with how narrow is this distribution? These are all distributions. They're somewhat normal to some extent, but they're skewed in some direction. How flat is that? It's hard. Like, I'm trying to be not mathematical here. Like, how flat? Like, this is much flatter by the mean, and this is much narrower by the mean. So, for instance, on this one, if I just bring, let's see, I don't even know where this goes. Poisson distribution. Sign into down. I don't want to sign in to download a full whatever. I could, let's see. Yeah, I could zoom in enough, I guess. So if you see here, like if someone has a distribution like this, like the first, like just a little bit off, like gets you much further down in whatever it is in frequency, right? But or a flatter median. So for instance, someone like a slap hitter in baseball, or a goal line back in football. Like if you're like someone that like, hey, they run the ball on like 3rd and 1 or on the goal line or something like that, you would see the distribution look something like this, right? It's very unlikely they're putting up 80 yards, but they may get 5 carries a game. So they put up like 3 to 8 yards like all the time. But like even 20 yards is way down, right? And 30 yards is even wayer down. So it's a very narrow at the top. Yet someone that carries the ball 25 times, you're going to see a much flat, like I would call this flat. It's not flat, but more smoother. I don't know how else to say it non-mathematically. So understanding distributions, at least conceptually, I'm trying to not make it a math like you got to plug in a formula. I know sports projections, that's what you should be doing, right? Right, the best and simplest option. Right, it's going to be the most directionally correct option. Just plug in the mean into a Poisson distribution, and there you go. There's the probability for it. But if you just think in terms of, well, I'm not sure about formulas and what number do I put in and whatever like that, just think in your head of how narrow or how wide that by where the median is does that stat lie. Just conceptualize it. So pitching outs, right, are going to look much narrower like this. Strikeouts, if it's high number of strikeouts, it'll be much flatter. If we take a look at like yards, like what's the difference if we have let's go to Prize Picks. Let's go passing yards, for instance. We go to passing yards. Okay, the blitz doesn't even have stuff up yet. So here we have Joe Flacco at 225, whatever. Let's just say that our model has his mean at 245. Is the 20 yards worth it? What's the difference? What's his probability of putting up 225 versus 245? versus 205. Like something like that. Maybe very close. But if we had, let's say your model had his mean projected, he wouldn't have, of 300. Like you'd be taking out a loan for this. Right? But 20 yards may not be enough for to be minus 137. But 20 yards rushing definitely would be. Like I think like we take a look at the rushing yards. Okay, we have some rushing yards here. Right? So for instance, if the blitz or whatever model showed David Montgomery with only 45 yards rushing, like you'd be hammering. It's still 20 yards, but 20 passing yards are much different than 20 rushing yards at this level. But let's say you had Jonathan Taylor at 107.5. So that's still 20 yards. How much is that worth compared to his 87.5? How often does he hit 107 versus 87? And that's what sports projections is saying by putting the mean into a Poisson distribution. So if this is off, if you go and like, let's say the blitz has Mixon at 79. Like if that was a plus 100, like if you got a no vig, if you went to FanDuel or whatever and you found plus 100 at 74.5, like this, and you had it at 79 and you weren't paying a vig, then yeah, you'd obviously bet it. But now that you're paying a vig, how much does the vig equal into rushing yards? 3, 4 for this? So how much of an edge do you really have on 79 rushing yards? On a minus 110 line. Like it would be like maybe 2 yards. You got 2 yards of edge. That's 79 on a regular sports book. But it's nowhere near a minus 137, right? So if we had mixed it at 79 and this prop is 74.5 for prize picks, we're going to have to pick 2 of these and only get paid minus 137 for 2 of these. So we need to find something that is much more often than five rushing yards for Joe Mixon. It could be 15 passing yards for some guy that only has a 30-yard passing prop. Right? We look at passing props right here. I haven't looked at projections, so these are made up numbers. Like we go through here, and like I go through here, and like let's say Jacoby Myers, for instance. Like if his projection was at like 68, like then he's slamming this. That's way over minus. That's way worth the 37 cents. But let's say his projection was 59.5 or 60. Maybe not. The difference in his projection curve may not be worth it. That 59 may not be, 59 is the median, 52.5 may be at like the 44th percentile. And you need to get it down to like the 42nd percentile, 41st and a half percentile. So how many receiving yards would you need for a 52.5 to be off? Probably 12 for prize picks and underdog. Probably 12 yards. Right? So if you have it more than 12 yards off in either direction, maybe I have him only getting 36 as a mean. You'd probably be wrong, but then you'd be like, okay, now I'm taking the under. So it has to be significantly off. If you're going through and like I'm going to go through and I'm going to be like, well, this was 3 yards off. I'm going to take that. This is 2 yards off. It's like you're going to lose money because you're paying too much of a vig for only to be beating these props by 2 yards. If it was plus 100 no vig on a sports book, then you could do that. Right? And have like 0.8% edge. Yeah, and just have that add up over time. That's perfectly fine. But on these sites, you need to find minus 137s. And that's the problem with these sites is that if you're not looking for minus 137s, the vig here is immense. Is immense. The hold here is nuts. But they do hang bad lines. They do hang bad lines all the time. And they hang bad lines enough that you could pair 2 together and be profitable plus EV. because they're off by enough by that. But look how many props there are. I mean, look for NFL. They've already put up like 3 for NFL. But I mean, MLB on any day. Look, the strikeouts. I'm not even counting the first run stuff. Earn runs allowed, hits allowed. Then we have all the hitter ones. And the hitter ones have different distributions, right? A lot of people go in and go, okay, oh, Freddie Freeman I have for 10 fantasy points, right? Or something like that, right? They go, oh, that's 2 points off. It's like, well, hitter distributions are different than pitcher distributions. So being 2 points off, like the difference between 8 points and 10 points isn't that dramatic, right? Because we get a point, because that's a Poisson distribution that looks more like, okay, let's see if I can find it. Like this red line, like that's more of a batter's Poisson distribution because they come up with zeros a lot, right? So like that mean of 8 is like the difference between 8 and 10 is very, very minimal. Just like the difference between 0 and 3 is minimal. So if you have a projection of like, if you have a projection of a guy at like 6.5 and they're posting a line of 5.5, 5.5 and 6.5 aren't that dramatically different. At least not so much, right? If you have 6.5 and 7 and you, Jonathan India, you have at 7.5 points as a mean. You go, well, that's 1 full point off. I'm going to go more. It's like, no, that's not minus 137. Jonathan India would have to have like a 5. Right. You have him projected for 7.5, but he would need to be a 5, maybe not even 4.5. Just because of the way that hitters' distributions are. So that's why you could look through some of these hitters and go, well, they're off by like 2 points. All of them are off by 2 points. And that's also a sign. Think just from an Occam's razor standpoint. That these companies like Prize Picks and Underdog, like they know what they're doing to some extent. Right? On overall, they may miss. Now, they may have 1% of stuff that you could find today that is significantly enough off that you could be profitable doing it. But 99% of their stuff is efficient or within the minus 137 range. Okay? So let's say your projections, you're like, oh, all these hitters are 2 points off. Do you really think they're hanging all? Do you really think all these numbers are wrong? Or that you're just not calculating the distribution properly, or you're not considering it, you're not conceptualizing it correctly. These are all 2 points off, and you're like, oh, I got to bet all of them. Like, no, you're probably wrong. But you could still go through some hitters. I think, where's Soto? I think Soto over 6.5. I think this is significant. I think his projection is like 9 points something or other. And it's like 3 points off at 6.5. This is probably a minus 145 or something in implied probability. I think Yelich also. Those are the only 2 on Prize Picks I have, right? It's over 6. I would have preferred Soto be at 6 and Yelich at 5.5, but it's still enough. Prize Picks hitter fantasy score ones are typically you can't find anything. Right. Enough. And even that Soto and Yelich ones aren't very good. Like I found them just so I could pair them with Carrasco and Lopez. It was like one of those things where it's like Lopez and Carrasco ones. I'm just looking at my sheet over here. Were so plus EV that I just like, I need to find something that is at least even close to plus EV just so I could make more 2 picks. So that's why I found those 2 hitters. I'm like, okay, those are the 2 most off. But typically these hitter distributions, like by that mean, are just so condensed there that like 2 points in one direction is never going to get you to minus 137 most of the time. But sometimes they have bad lines. Sometimes they post up 4.5s that should be 5s. Sometimes they post up 9.5s that should be 8, that should be like 8s. And then you could do the under. But a lot of times these hitter fantasy, the hitter ones on Prize Picks are not particularly good, only because of the minus 137. If they were an actual sports book and you could bet these at minus 110s or whatever, then it could be worth it. But at minus 137, you're just never going to get far enough away from the mean for it to be off enough for it to be profitable to play. So that's why, like, these are the last things I look at are the hitter ones, total bases, like stuff like that. Total base is a little bit more. Sometimes I hang a bad one. depending, but most of the time they do. Most of the time they're fine. Same for RBIs and runs. Right? Sometimes they post one that is way over or way under, but it's quite rare. So I don't focus on the hitting ones as much as the pitching ones. Why? Because the pitching ones are much more normally distributed. Right? So it's much easier to determine how far away from the mean you need to get to be profitable. It's a little bit of a math lesson today, right? I can always tell when I'm doing a math lesson when I look in the YouTube chat and people just don't have any questions. Because I'm concerned that's like, up, math lesson time for me to fall asleep. Right? Time for me to fall asleep. Where are the plays? Where are the picks? Welcome to DFS. Welcome to sports betting. If you look at actual top sharp sports bettors, professionals, they're dealing more with this type of stuff that you see on the screen than they are with watching the actual games. Okay? You just use the data and just pick off numbers, arbitrage numbers, right? Like I could go on underdog right now and bet and make picks with the Lopez under 6.5 and try to middle it at 6 if I wanted to. Right? You could do something like if you wanted, that's arbitrage there. You could, but not when the projection is so far. I mean, I'd rather keep my 5.5s and just let it ride. I'm not gonna bother even trying to middle. It's just so far off. Unless it moves another one. If Lopez moves to 7.5, then maybe it's worth it. I would have to take a look at the distribution and see how often does 6 and 7 come up, and see if it would be more worth it to use it on underdog. The problem with all these sites, though, with if you try to like middle, is that you still have to pair it with something else. It's not like normal prop betting where you can just bet on the prop and so be it. Minus 110, minus 120, plus 120, like something like that. Here, I still would have to pair the Lopez under 7.5 with something else also. Right? And if I can't find a plus EV bet on the other side, I mean, it's all dependent on that. So that's why, like, finding those middle opportunities, unless you can find 2 of them at the same time, right, and do them both together, I mean, like, it's rarely worth it. Nbot says, interesting stuff. I stopped playing prize picks when I saw you post something in the bat Discord about it probably not being long-term profitable. Well, if you don't know what you're doing, it isn't, right? 99% of the stuff on prize picks and underdog are absurdly vague, right? Being that they're fixed parlays. But look, I went through, I found a bunch that are off. I could find a bunch that are off every day, but the bunch that are off every day is still like 1% of what's on their site. So understand that it's like, if you're going to go in, if you're going to, I'm going to play Adrian Sampson under, like that could be a plus 130. Like this could be a plus 130. This could be, I mean, if you don't know what you're doing, you don't realize, right? If everyone's like, a Javier under, right? Because I got him at 7. And you may not realize that this under 6, when priced on an actual sports book, may be a plus 110. Like you're looking for minus 137s, and now you're actively playing something that is actually not favored. Like you could really run into stuff like that if you don't know what you're doing. So if you know what you're doing and you could find something and then not get limited, like you're fine. But on average, I'd say most people are significantly unprofitable on prize picks. Significantly. Nbot said, I was not going in depth like you. I was just doing fantasy points that were off plus or minus about 6 fantasy points. Yes, but it also depends on how many fantasy points that is. Like if someone has an 18.5 fantasy point prop on prize picks, maybe 23.5 and 22.5 may be enough. 4 may be over. Because at that range, like as long as he doesn't give up any runs, he doesn't even need, he could give up runs and then get a ton of strikeouts, or he could get no strikeouts and not give up a ton of runs and get the quality start and the win, right? There's a lot more ways at the low range of fantasy points for the difference between 18.5 and 22.5 to be fairly dramatic enough, right? But at the high end, maybe not so much, right? 36 and 40 are not that dramatically different from one another, as opposed to 18 and 22. Right? I'm not even sure if I would do 18 and if it was 18 and 22, it probably is not a minus 137 anyway, but it would be close. Be close enough. So that's why that Gibson one that was like 7 points off, like that one I did. But the fact that it didn't move, I never like it when my lines don't move, right? So I put everything down on the sheet. You can see here, right? And anytime something moves, I just underline the prop. Basically, that tells me there's no longer value there. So anytime at the end of the day on my sheet when I do this, the more underlines I see, it doesn't matter what the results are, right? I'm just looking at I want to be able to underline as many props on these sites that I have. That's it. And the days that I have the most underlines should be the most profitable days on average. And that's all I'm looking for. If by the time if Gibson starts pitching, right? What time is the game? Who knows? 6:45. If at 6:45, if it's still at 4 strikeouts and 21.5 fantasy points, that means it's not underlined, and I'm that's not closing line value. I'd rather have put that money towards more Lopez and Javier and Cortez and Carrasco and Stripling unders. I would have rather put everything in there. And knowing the bat, how much the bat typically likes Gibson more than the market, I could have known that beforehand also. I mean, I did know that beforehand. So I knew when I saw the Gibson stuff look good that I'm going to tone it down a little. Because because I've been doing this. So I know, okay, Gibson's here. Oh, Manoah's on the slate. The bet hates Manoah, right? Okay, so these Manoah unders, I'm going to want the unders on all of these, right? But how much so? Because what ends up happening is you do the under and it doesn't move. It's like my whole goal is to bet the number early before it moves. That's it. That is the key to sports betting. If you could bet a number before it moves, you win in the long run. So the more bets that you can make and the higher percentage of time that it moves and the bigger that it moves, you win in the long run. That is the sports betting game. That is just like DFS is a game. That's the sports betting game. So if you focus on that and less on, well, I think this guy's going to do well. It's like, dude, just all you have to do is beat the number. I don't care how you beat the number. Even if you don't do it by looking at projection model, even if you're doing it by just like, oh, I think he's going to do well. Like, oh, I should bet this. I should bet that. You should judge your sports betting through how often do you get closing line value. That's it. That's it. Welcome to the game. That's it. And Bot asks, do you stick with 2 choices? Or you ever go up to the 4 or the 5 choice wagers? No, I only do 2s. Or 3. I do 2s on Prize Picks, and I try to do 3s on Underdog because 3s pay 6 to 1 rather than 5 to 1 on Prize Picks. So I try to make 3 combos, which is a little bit tougher. You have to round robin them a little bit more. I round robin everything. Okay? I want the lowest variance for the most edge. Okay? So it's like if I find 5, if I find I'll find like right here. Oh, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I got 14 props on Prize Picks. Okay. I have every combo of those 14. And obviously not every combo. Once the line moved, I stopped using that prop. So like once Carrasco moved from under 6K, I didn't make 5.5s. I didn't make 5s. I didn't make those. Right. I just stopped. But like out of those 14, like the first one with the second one, the first one with the third one, the first one with the fourth one, the first for like 20, 30 bucks each. Right. So I'm just round robining them. Right. Because if I could get 60% of them right, I profit. That's all I'm looking for over time. I don't want to have to worry about, well, here I have 5 pick and a 5 pick, and this one was in that one. You could round robin 5 picks if you want, or 4 pick, or any of them. You could round robin anything, but it's very hard. Remember, there's no like upload. I can't do this in Excel and then upload it to a site. So I have to manually put in all the combos. Imagine keeping track of that for five combinations. A, B, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 11 to 14. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 5, 7. 1, 2, 3. I mean, like, dude, You know how long that's going to take and how much you're going to track to do all 5 picks by round robining them all? It's much easier with the 2 picks, right? You just go, 1 to 2, 1 to 3, 1 to 4, 1 to 5. You just keep on going right down in a row. I do it pretty damn fast. And I always start with the highest edge ones. So once I saw the Lopez and Carrasco ones were so far off, like I'm just jamming those first, right? I want to get it before the line moves. And then I start finding ones that have a little bit less of an edge. And then I start, I found one. Okay, pair it with Lopez, pair it with Carrasco. Move on. Next one, pair it with Lopez, pair it with Carrasco, then pair it with the other one that I found. Next one, pair it with this, pair it with that, pair it with the other 2. Okay, next one. Pair with, and then next thing you know, you have a list. Next thing you're down to the 14th one, and I added the 14th one, and now I'm making 13 combinations of $20 each for all of them, right? Or something like $10 each, whatever it is that you do. Like that's much harder to do that in 5, like, especially you may not know what all of your the props are going to be, right? Do I want to wait until I find 5 in order to make a 5? No, dude, I'm slamming this Lopez Carrasco one like immediately, right? I'm doing a 2 pick, no problem. Boom. The whole point is to have the least amount of variance for the most edge, right? You don't want to have to be stuck going, well, I didn't get the right guy in the right lineup and the right thing and the right whatever. It's so much easier to just like, nope. It doesn't matter to me which one is with anything. They're all 2 picks. So out of my 14 props, obviously I put more money down on the Lopez and Carrasco ones. But on average, like if I could get 8 out of 14, 9 out of 14, which if I'm getting 58.5%, if I'm doing them right, like I should, I make money. If I get all 14, I have a great day. If I have 13, I mean, even 10 out of 14, I have a great day. Right? But it's also rare that like I'm only going to get 2 right. Right? So it's I may have $2,000 or $3,000 with all these combinations in play. Would it be as rare as it would be? Like just do the computation of if you have an implied probability of 60% on all your props, how often you will get all 14 wrong. It's very minuscule. You're more likely to be somewhere bulk wise in like the 7 to 11 range. That'll be a bulk of them. You get 7 out of 14, you lose a little bit of money. Bad day would be getting like 4 or 5. It's like, okay, that was a bad day. Right? But you're going to get a lot of ones where you get 8, 9 out of 14. I mean, I'm saying 14 because I have 14 currently. So your swings aren't going to be as wide. And as long as you're beating the closing line and the lines are moving in your favor, like, dude, just there you go. You're done. You're there, right? And you put money down, and most likely you're not. You could play, a good 10, 15% of your bankroll on for this type of thing if you're round robining in that fashion, because the risk of ruin has gone extremely down. And even on average, if you just put it into like the Kelly formula with a 60% edge, it's actually going to tell you to bet even more, right? So you can say, 10 to 15%, that sounds like a lot, right? Especially coming from me, who is a nit. But it really isn't. If you do the Kelly calculation, it really is. It's gonna want you to put in like 40% of your bankroll on a given day. If you use full Kelly, that's what ends up happening. That I'm not willing to do. Right? It's not like I have a bankroll necessarily set aside for sports betting for this type of stuff, but I kind of do. It's not the major part. Most of my bankroll is devoted to DFS. So it's like, okay, maybe I got 20K like mentally in my head. 20K is my sports betting stuff, right? Or pick stuff or whatever. So I don't bet on sports because I'm not in a legal state and I'm not dealing with the goddamn offshores and having to find accounts and do proxies and everything. So it's like, Prize Picks, Underdog. Okay, do that, right? Find the thing that's legal. Why not? Javada Kimi says, how about esports Prize Picks? I don't know. I don't know anything about esports. I assume if you have projections and you have sharp book lines to go by, you could find stuff. But no, I know nothing about esports, so I don't do esports. I don't know it. Is there an edge in League of Legends? Yes, there probably is. There's an edge everywhere. CSGO or what? Yeah, sure, if you know it. Is there an edge in tennis? Sure. Is Tyro Daniel going to have 22.5 games? Someone has projections, right? I don't. So that you can find edges everywhere. You don't have to get all the edges. Like when people ask me, it's like, why don't you play college football DFS? I said, I don't really know college football. I said, well, why don't you learn college football? Because there's an edge there. I said, there's an edge in every sport. There's an edge in everything. I'm only one person, though. I'm only one person. So what am I supposed to do? Play 14 sports at the same time in 28 slates and across 17 sites? Because people say, oh, have you ever heard of this site? There's a lot of edge there. I've never even heard of it. It's like, well, you should play there. And I look into it. It's like, oh, well, I could. How much is this worth it compared to other things? And like, I'm only one person. There's a 2% edge there. Why aren't you there? Because there's a 5% edge here that I'm focused on. Right? That's the only difference. I'm not saying that there isn't an edge there. Just I'm only one person. I wish I could do everything all at once, but I can't. Okay, hit that thumbs up button on your way out the door. It was Teaching Tuesday to some extent, right? Teaching Tuesday. We taught, we learned. I think we learned a little bit. I tried not to give like a formula-based math lesson. It's hard. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's like, I just want to show you the formula and just plug it in, right? And you'll be like, I don't get anything. What is the P? What does this U symbol mean? What is this U? Like, I don't want to do that. Because then people just like, I ain't, no, I'm sorry. So it's like conceptually. Can you conceptually think about it? So give me those thumbs. Tomorrow, I don't know what we'll do tomorrow. Wednesday, we got NFL stuff, right? It's always going to be NFL, MLB, NBA. Well, eventually going to have NBA back. That's going to be a nullster, right? Who's in, who's out, doesn't matter. 6:55, change all your lineups. Can't wait for that, right? Can't really wait for NBA. As always, we got Grinders live later for the MLB slate with Dean and the guys. Crunch time after that, presented by FanDuel. There's weather going on. Roth will be talking about it. We got live locks on the Scores and Odds channel, and we got all the NFL content you could ever want. Sign up for RotoGrinders Premium. Get the NFL package if you want, just the NFL package, or get the combo premium. Right? Get all the sports all at once and find me in the Discord. Say, hey, I was talking to someone this morning. I answered, I'm more accessible there than waiting to be on the show. And also tonight is another Discord coaching call. So I'll be on Zoom if you're part of the RG Discord. And you can get on and you get private coaching. I'm on Zoom and I'll answer anything. It's never recorded. So you got to be there and take advantage of that. Sign up for RotoGrinders. Click on the link in the description. Get $10 off your first month. And I'll see you guys tomorrow answering your DFS strategy questions, that I normally do on the DFS pregame show on RotoGrinders.com.